The door slammed shut behind me with a force that rattled the windows, and I stumbled onto the rain-slicked porch, my suitcase skidding across the wet wood like a discarded toy. "Get out, you worthless bitch!" My husband's voice thundered from inside, muffled but venomous, laced with a rage I'd never heard before, not even in our worst fights. Lightning cracked the sky, illuminating his silhouette through the frosted glass. His fists clenched as if he might punch through it. My heart hammered in my chest, a wild, trapped thing, and hot tears mixed with the downpour stinging my face. Humiliation burned hotter than the betrayal I'd just uncovered. The lipstick-stained shirt in his drawer, the late-night texts from Sarah that I'd finally confronted him about. He'd actually laughed before shoving me toward the door. "You're delusional, Emily. Always have been. Now get the hell out before I call the cops." I stood there, soaked and shattered, the weight of 9 years of marriage crumbling like wet paper in my hands. How had it come to this? How had I not seen the cracks widening into chasms? I clutched my coat tighter, the chill seeping into my bones as I dragged my suitcase down the steps. The neighborhood streetlights flickered like judgmental eyes, casting long shadows that seemed to mock my isolation. My mind raced through the fragments of our life together. Mark's charming smile at our wedding, the way he'd held me after my father's funeral, promising forever. But forever had curdled into deceit. I'd given up my career for him, moved across states for his job, buried my dreams in the soil of his ambitions. And now, penniless, friendless, with only the clothes on my back and a faded leather wallet in my pocket. My father's wallet, actually, the one he'd pressed into my hands on his deathbed 2 years ago. His voice a rasp from the cancer that devoured him. "For emergencies, Em. Keep it safe." Inside was an old credit card, its edges worn, the embossed name Robert Harlan barely legible. I'd never used it. It felt like tempting fate, like admitting defeat. But as thunder rolled overhead, defeat stared me in the face. I had nowhere to go, no family left, no savings Mark hadn't siphoned into our joint account, which he'd conveniently locked me out of that morning. Hailing a cab in the storm felt like a small act of defiance, the driver's sympathetic glance in the rearview mirror only deepening my shame. "Motel on the edge of town," I muttered, my voice hoarse. As we drove, resentment coiled in my gut like a serpent awakening. Mark's betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was the systematic erosion of my self-worth, the gaslighting that made me question my sanity. "You're overreacting," he'd say when I asked about the late nights. "Paranoid, just like your old man." My father, God, how Mark had despised him, calling him a reclusive nutjob for living in that isolated cabin, hoarding secrets until the end. But Dad had always warned me about Mark. "He's got hungry eyes, kiddo. Watch your back." I dismissed it as bitterness from a lonely widower. Now those words echoed like prophecy. By the time I checked into the dingy motel room, the kind with peeling wallpaper and a faint mildew scent, anger had eclipsed the heartbreak. I paced the threadbare carpet, fists clenched, imagining Mark's smug face as he packed my things, probably already calling Sarah over. The thought fueled a dark fantasy. Storming back, exposing his lies to his colleagues, ruining him. But how? I was broken. Exhaustion finally claimed me, but sleep brought no peace. Only nightmares of Mark's laughter morphing into my father's dying cough. I woke at dawn, the gray light filtering through cracked blinds, my stomach gnawing with hunger. The motel coffee was bitter sludge, but it sharpened my resolve. I couldn't beg for scraps. I needed a plan. Rifling through the wallet again, my fingers brushed the old card. American Express, black as night, no expiration date visible. Dad had said it was special, but he'd been vague, his eyes clouded with pain meds. "It'll open doors, Em. When you need it most." Desperation overrode caution. I'd use it for a meal, a bus ticket out of this hellhole. Maybe it still worked. Grabbing my coat, I headed to the nearest diner, the bell jingling like a mocking chime as I slid into a booth. The waitress, a tired woman with kind eyes, took my order: eggs, toast, coffee. When she returned with the bill, I handed over the card, my heart pounding. What if it was declined? Humiliation twice in 24 hours. The machine beeped acceptance, and relief washed over me like warm rain. But as I signed the slip, a seed of curiosity sprouted. Why had Dad given me this? He'd lived modestly, a retired accountant who'd lost everything in a bad investment, or so he'd claimed. No inheritance, just debts and that cabin sold off to cover medical bills. Or had he? Doubt niggled as I left the diner, the card burning a hole in my pocket. I needed answers, stability. A bank. There was a branch downtown, the same one Dad had used. Maybe they could tell me about the account. The walk there cleared my head, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot, their decay mirroring my mood. The bank lobby was sterile, all polished marble and hushed voices, a far cry from my disheveled state. I approached the teller, a young man with a practiced smile. "I'd like to check the balance on this card," I said, sliding it across the counter. He swiped it, his expression shifting from boredom to confusion. "1 moment, ma'am." He typed furiously, then excused himself, disappearing into a back office. Minutes stretched like hours, my anxiety spiking. What if it was stolen? Fraudulent? The serpent of resentment twisted tighter. Mark would love this, me arrested for using a dead man's card. Finally, an older woman emerged, her name tag reading, Ms. Rivera, manager. She was poised, mid-50s, with sharp eyes behind rimless glasses. "Mrs. Harlan." "Emily Harlan." I nodded, throat dry. She gestured to her office. "Please come with me." The office smelled of fresh coffee and leather, a world away from my motel's mustiness. Ms. Rivera closed the door softly, but her face was pale, hands trembling slightly as she sat. "This card. It's linked to an account under your father's name. But there's more to it." She paused, swallowing hard as if weighing her words. "When we saw the activation you're used this morning, it triggered a protocol. Your father set up a trust, accessible only upon certain conditions. One being the use of this card after his passing." My mind reeled. A trust. He never mentioned. "It's substantial," she interrupted, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Over $5 million, invested wisely. But there's a letter sealed, for your eyes only." She slid an envelope across the desk, the paper thick and yellowed. My hands shook as I opened it, Dad's familiar scrawl jumping out. If you're reading this, things went south. Mark's not who he seems. He approached me years ago, sniffing around my finances. I played poor to test him. The money's yours. Use it to rebuild. But beware, he's cunning. Evidence enclosed. Enclosed was a USB drive. My blood ran cold. Evidence. Of what? Ms. Rivera's eyes widened as I voiced the question. "We weren't privy to details, but your father was adamant about privacy. He said it would protect you." Suspense hung in the air like fog. I pocketed the drive, mind racing. Betrayal deepened. Mark had known. Targeted me. The humiliation morphed into cold fury. I thanked her numbly, leaving with a new debit card linked to the trust, the weight of wealth clashing with my ragged clothes. Back at the motel, I borrowed the front desk's ancient computer, plugging in the USB. Files flooded the screen. Emails, bank statements, photos. Mark meeting a shady investor, siphoning funds from Dad's accounts before his death. Small amounts, untraceable until now. And worse. Correspondence with Sarah, his mistress, plotting to declare me incompetent, seize any inheritance. "She's unstable," one email read. "Once she's out, we claim it all." Heartbreak shattered into obsession. He'd married me for this. Played the loving husband while plotting my downfall. Guilt flickered, had I been blind? But no, this was his doing. Resolve hardened like steel. I wouldn't confront him yet. No, I'd plan, let him think he'd won. Quietly, I'd dismantle his life. Days blurred into calculated moves. I rented a modest apartment under a false name. The city's hum a backdrop to my scheming. Mornings I'd stare at the ceiling, doubt creeping in. Was revenge worth my soul? Moral conflict gnawed. Dad wouldn't want this darkness. But then I'd remember the rain, the slam, and resentment surged. I hired a private investigator, paying in cash from the trust. Dig into Mark Harlan, I instructed, voice steady despite the tremor inside. The PI, a grizzled man named Reyes, nodded. Affair. Fraud. I got you. Reports trickled in. Mark and Sarah cohabiting in our house. Him bragging at work about dodging a bullet. Photos of them laughing, toasting. Each image fueled my fantasies, exposing him, bankrupting him. But I held back, building suspense in my own mind. Subtle hints. An anonymous tip to his boss about irregularities in his accounts, mirroring his theft from Dad. He lost a promotion, I learned, paranoia setting in. I watched from afar, parked across the street, heart pounding as he glanced out windows, uneasy. One night, alone with a glass of wine, guilt resurfaced. What if I forgave? Moved on. But no, the obsession was a drug, cold resolve its high. I drafted emails, unsent, pouring out rage. You took everything, Mark. Now I'll take more. Fear mingled. What if he fought back? Discovered the trust. Tension built like a storm gathering. Then, the pivotal moment, Reyes called. Got something big. Mark's embezzling from his firm. Using your joint account as a front. Proof attached. Ledgers, timestamps. My plan crystallized. Use the evidence to tip authorities, but first, lure him into a trap. Make him beg. The email I sent was anonymous, routed through proxies I'd learned about online. Meet me at the old cabin. I know about the money. Come alone or it goes public. I signed it, a friend. The cabin, Dad's old place, now mine via the trust, abandoned but symbolic. Mark would recognize it, sweat at the implication. I imagined his face paling, the smugness cracking. Doubt plagued me as I drove there that evening. The winding road flanked by whispering pines, their needles crunching under tires like brittle bones. Was this justice or madness? Heartbreak lingered, a dull ache, but resentment overpowered it. I dressed simply, jeans, hoodie, to blend into the shadows, but inside I was a vortex of emotions. Fear of confrontation, thrill of control. He arrived at dusk, his BMW kicking up gravel, headlights slicing the gloom. I watched from the tree lean, breath shallow, as he stepped out, scanning nervously. Hello. His voice echoed, laced with false bravado. Who's there? I waited, letting suspense thicken the air, the wind rustling leaves like conspiratorial murmurs. Finally I emerged, stepping into the beam. Me, Mark. Your wife. His eyes widened, shock rippling across his face. Then calculation. Emily. What the hell? You look different. I did. Stronger, eyes hardened. He glanced around, uneasy. What's this about? The email. Cut the crap, I snapped, voice steady despite the inner storm. I know everything. The affair, the embezzlement, how you targeted me for Dad's money. I held up the USB, its plastic cool in my palm. His facade cracked, guilt flashing before defiance. You're crazy. Always were. That old man filled your head with lies. But his hands trembled, betraying him. Dialogue sharpened the tension. I pressed. Admit it, Mark. You married me thinking I'd inherit nothing, but when you sniffed out the trust, you planned to institutionalize me. Sarah was just the bonus. He laughed, but it was hollow, echoing off the cabin's weathered walls. Proof. You have nothing. I smiled coldly, pulling out printouts, emails, photos. Enough to ruin you. Cops, IRS, your boss. All waiting for my signal. Panic seeped in. He stepped closer, voice pleading now. Baby, let's talk. I messed up, okay? The money, we can share it. Sarah means nothing. Manipulation dripped from his words, but I saw the layers. Desperation masking greed. Moral conflict surged. Was I no better, toying with him? But humiliation's scar burned fresh. Share. After you kick me out in the rain. Left me for dead. He lunged for the papers, but I dodged, adrenaline surging. Don't, I warned, hand in pocket on my phone, recording everything. The scuffle was brief, his grab missing, sending him stumbling. You bitch, he snarled, rage unmasked. But I held firm, resolve ironclad. Here's the deal, I said, pacing slowly, building the reveal. Sign over the house, the cars, everything. Confess to the firm. Leave town with Sarah penniless. Or this goes viral. His eyes darted, calculating escape, but the isolation trapped him. Suspense peaked as silence stretched, crickets chirping like a ticking clock. Finally he broke. Fine. But why? Revenge. It won't fix you. His words stung, probing my guilt. Obsession wavered. Did I want this darkness? But no, justice demanded it. We drove to the bank the next day. He under duress, me feigning reconciliation for appearances. Ms. Rivera met us, her office familiar. Transfers, I explained curtly. Mark signed papers, face ashen, transferring assets to me. But the twist came when I presented Dad's card again. For verification. Rivera swiped it, then froze, eyes locking on her screen. What's wrong? Mark demanded, tension electric. She looked at me, then him, voice hushed. This account. It's flagged. FBI alert. Your father's investments. Turns out they were tied to a fraud ring. Mark Harlan's name is all over the accomplices list. Shock hit like lightning. Mark bolted upright. What? No. But it was true. Dad's bad investment was a sting operation. He'd played poor but was undercover, gathering evidence on crooks, including Mark, who'd been a junior player years ago. The card's use had activated the final protocol, alerting authorities to loose ends. Sirens wailed outside as agents burst in, cuffing Mark. You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement. His eyes met mine, betrayal mirrored, but mine was justified. You set me up, he whispered. No, I replied, cold resolve intact. Dad did. Poetic, isn't it? As they dragged him away, guilt flickered one last time, but faded. Revenge delivered, with unexpected consequences. Freedom, wealth, and a clean slate. Yet in quiet moments, obsession lingered, a shadow. Had I become the monster? Or just survived? The cabin stood silent now, but in my mind, it echoed with closure. Heartbreak healed into strength, betrayal into triumph. And Mark, rotting in a cell. His hungry eyes dimmed forever.